Um, His Excellency Donald Ramotar has proven to be not only a statesman. Um, what fascinated me, or what basically increased my respect
Yes.
for him, is when he decided that he should prorogue the parliament. The president did that against the background that he believes in consultation, he believes in discussing a way forward, and he realized that the parliament was not getting anywhere. He realized that elections were not constitutionally due until another 2 years. And so, to disrupt the work of the parliament, the
Yes.
president felt that it would be better to suspend the parliament, prorogue the parliament, and that what he felt would have given the leaders, if they were indeed serious in taking Guyana forward, in meeting with him, basically, and them ironing out whatever differences they had. But the opposition, that is Mr. David Granger and Kemra Ramjatan, who had appeared to be the leader of the Alliance for Change at that time, they refused the olive branch, as I would call it, that the president extended. And for me, it's about the development of the country, how we can serve the country and taking the country forward. And so, as I said to you, whole the respect went up for the president tremendously based on that only. But apart from that, um, I do believe that His Excellency Donald Ramtar is the best
Yes.
leader to support, in that he has proven. Let's look at the Barry Ramsaran
Yes.
saga, if you want to call it that. Some persons out there believe that he was provoked, but that's their opinion. But I believe even if you're provoked, you do have a right to restrain yourself, particularly when you are a public figure. And even if you're not a public figure, decency should dictate to any human being that you should treat not only women but men with respect. Everyone should be treated with respect. And the fact that Donald Ramotar took a decision after some people are complaining that 9 days was a bit too long, it was not, because it shows that there was time for there to be a hearing. Natural justice in a democratic society is so important. Minister Barry Ramsaran, he did have the right to be heard, and I believe the time would have provided him with that right. And perhaps after listening to everything the president, like any sensible judge, if we want to call it that, would take time before they come out with their decision. And so for me, 9 days, and people, they're saying that the only reason why Mr. Donald Ramotar acted the way he did is because he was forced by the Alliance for Change and the Partnership for National Unity, the coalition. I don't believe that that's so. I do believe that Donald Ramotar he's a principled person, as I said before, and he would not act based on political pressure. We have seen that even though the coalition, as they call themselves now, had taken the no confidence motion against Minister Rohi,
Yes.
and he was gagged, he was silenced in the National Assembly, and they were calling on His Excellency Donald Ramotar to have Rohi resigned or sacked. And even though there was all that pressure, as you want to call it, the president allowed the Commission of Inquiries that was inquiring into the Linden incident to do its work. And the report established that Minister Rohi was not responsible. And so the president acted very wisely in not calling on the
Good point.
minister to resign, because if the president had succumbed to the pressure, as they want to call it, and he had taken preemptive action against Minister Roy, that would have certainly been the wrong way to go,
Yes.
because we have seen from the report that minister was not responsible. And so I would strongly oppose the view out there, and I would say to members of the public that you do have a mind of your own. Look at all the situations and draw your own conclusion, which would be, of course, it would prove that His Excellency Donald Ramtar does not speak from both sides of his mouth like many of the opposition leaders do. When he takes a position, it has been after thorough consideration of all the facts.
And principal positions
And
as
of
well. Now contrast that, because I've listened to um, some of your speeches, and I could sense hurt I could sense betrayal. I could sense disrespect. I could sense someone who has so much potential but was not given that opportunity to deliver on that potential. And those are my own personal conclusions when I sat down. Like for instance, when I listened to you at Port Kaituma in front the largest ever crowd in that community for the PVPC, or at Mabaruma, um, we want to contrast that because these are the people that are pretending that they're holier than thou, and when it's time for them to stand up and be counted when it matters, from what I gather, Mr. Granger was quiet against the abusers meted out to you.
Before I even speak to that, I want to say this that not only Port Kaituma and Mabarumas, the response from the residents there, very overwhelming, very positive, but all the other meetings that I've been speaking at, the person's response clearly indicates that the PPP will win this election outright. There is no question about that. There is no debate. Um, numbers is what really counts. And it's not about all these fancy posters and stickers on car driving around Georgetown and all the other places, but it is about the support we're getting from the people. And I am quite positive that come May 11th, May 12th, let's say, it's going to be victory for Guyana because the people will again give the People's Progressive Party the mandate to take them forward because most of the persons that I've spoken to, they've seen tremendous development under this administration, no question. And so they will certainly give the PPP another mandate. Um, you do know that we have to select or elect, we have to elect persons based on their character. And from my personal interaction with Mr. David Granger is one of the weakest persons that I know. I judge people based on the way they treat with situation, the way they deal with issues. And Mr. Granger's never dealt with issues. For example, when we were in the National Assembly, the old public, those who were looking, could have seen that we were always in a state of confusion, in that we were not told how to vote many times until we were there in the chambers sitting and the items are being called out. Then is when we knew whether we were voting for something or not voting for something. And in my mind, that's poor leadership. You know, I will not consider myself ready to lead this country, but I'm sure I could have done a better job than David Granger because you have to be organized, and the APNU and the AFC very, very disorganized. And Ali, the chief whip, would turn around and I was sitting very close behind her and would say, Africa, tell the others we vote in yes, we vote in no. Even without consulting us, don't we have, can't we make a contribution? Even the smallest child, as a teacher, my children, they're always suggesting things to me, and I'm always listening to them because the word of God says that we can learn from babes and sucklings. Yes. And maybe they don't consider me intelligent enough, but I beg to differ. I do have my own suggestions. I'm an educated person, thanks to the loan that I got from the People's Progressive Party. The People's Progressive Party, for example, His Excellency Donald Ramotar, he does not only talk about empowering young people, he ensures that the opportunities are there. Prior to 1992, for example, I attended President's College, and President's College was a school for, as they would call it, la creme de la creme, the cream of the crop. And I could recall that in my year in 1992, when I started President's College, you had one Amerindian child going to President's College. But now you have many, many indigenous
Yes.
children attending. And so it's not only talking about creating the opportunity, and for example, the PNC and Mr. Granger would want to boast of having this, what he calls the best program. It's Burnham Educational Scholarship Trust. And the persons who are given the scholarships, the children who are given the scholarships, are the PNC supporters' children. And so how could you speak about holistic approach or holistic development, and then you will selectively choose persons the children whose parents are the PNC supporters. That for me speaks of discrimination.
Yeah, contrast that
It,
with the government scholarship program. Every and anyone, irrespective of who you support or what you look like, you deserve a scholarship, you get your scholarship.
that is so true. And the other thing too, for example, the student loan. Whether you support the PNC, whether you support the PPP, you will still be entitled to the assistance provided to all students. It is not for some and not for others. And so this government has proven to be interested in the development of all Guyana. And as I've been saying to people, that the People's Progressive Party is not an Indo party. It's not a party only for Indian people, but it is a party that represents all interests, all races, all religions. And some people are saying out there that you should not support the PPP because it is some of them went so far as to say it's antichrist and 666. I don't know where they came up with that from. But I do know that many of the persons in the People's Progressive Party, they respect a higher being. They respect that there's a creator, you know, and based on that. And not only that, because you have, as the word of God says, not everyone that says, Lord, Lord, will see the kingdom. You have many hypocrites, and so some people, when it suits their agenda, when it suits them, then they will engage the churches, you know, but in their own living, you will see that it's not of God, and my experience in the PNC has taught me that, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord. Because I went into the PNC and I could now safely say that I would not go back there. And I would not encourage anyone to go there. Because you know why? It's a lot of double standards and hypocrisy. For example, Valda Lawrence, she would want to speak as the champion women's cause, and then she would get up in the National Assembly and say how they're thoroughly against violence. But she was right there at Deborah Backer's wake when I got there late with the forks that Amna Ali asked me to take. And I was standing, I'm not very good when it comes to feet and all that, but I was standing a good way from Amna Ali. And when she looked up and she saw me, she started off, F you Africo Selman, F you Africo Selman, like 7 times. I was so embarrassed I wanted to go into the ground. I am really not accustomed to being abused, And you know what? I cried, and Desmond Trotman, I went and I told him. And he said that lady is not changing, And when I told Christopher Jones, he said, write Mr. Granger about it. But I said, I don't want to write Mr. Granger because it was close to the budget debate. It was during the budget debates, and I really did not want to disrupt his thought process by saying that this is what's happening in the party, And when I told Christopher Jones, he told me, he said, right, because Amna has to stop this nonsense. Because he said, she did it to Renita Williams like 2 weeks ago. Renita Williams is one of the indigenous members of parliament. She used to be for the Partnership for National Unity. And very quiet person. Amerindian people are generally very reserved. Maybe that's where I got my reservation from, being mixed, and my grandmother is Amerindian, and that's why when people see you, when people see how simple you are, they try to take advantage of you. And that's what happens in the PNC, because you know what? In as much as I'm educated and all of that, I would not, the way I was brought up, I would not disrespect any functional authority.
And you would not be arrogant.
And I would not be arrogant. That's just not me. Many of the persons who know me since I was a very small girl, and even Mr. Success, my teacher who taught me, my mentor, my friend, my father, he would say, Miss, you've never changed. You are always the same way. And he says, one thing I like about you is the hope that I hear in your voice every time. You're so positive. He says that to me all the time. And so I am not an aggressive person. And so when she, what I would consider to be, assaulted me publicly, Vala Lawrence, she was just nearby. She was at the side of her, and she said not one word. I mean, that would have sent, for me, it would have spoken volumes if Vala Lawrence had said, no, you don't treat people that way. That's the least she could have done. But she stood by very quietly. you know. And then, but as I said, I did not want to disrupt Mr. Granger's thought process in preparing for the budget, so I didn't say anything to him. But as I was saying, Chris told me that Amna Ali, she cursed out Renita Williams, and Renita Williams missed General Counsel only because she went back to Maruka to organize for Joseph Harmon, who was going into the region. And that's why she missed it. She was taking instruction from Joseph Harmon.
And she was in
And
turn,
she was
and she was attacked.
attacked. No, no, no. Amna Ali called her and said, Renita, I would like to see you in my office Monday morning. And Renita traveled all the way from Region 1, Maruka, went to Congress Place to be publicly cursed out. F&S, she said, I put you in Parliament, Renita, and I would take you out. And these are the things that, and she's not even the representative of the list. And Renita Williams, she wrote to Mr. Granger because she was so embarrassed. I don't think she was ever embarrassed like that in her entire life. And you know what Miss Ali does? She takes the opportunity to speak to you like that when she has people in her office. She does that. And Mr. Granger is fully aware of that because it's not only Renita Williams, it's not only Africo Selman that was abused by Anna Ali. Ernest Elliott, this grown man who's a grandfather, maybe about to be, or perhaps he's a great grandfather. During the 2012 Congress, somebody whispered to Amna Ali, who seemed to be like the, I don't know, what is it from Mr. Granger, the pit bull. Somebody whispered to her that Ernest Elliott was supporting Carl Greenwich for the leadership of the party. And during the Congress, Mr. Elliott, he was standing in the yard. And Amna Ali went out to that man and cursed him out. I have never seen a big man cry. He sat down in that chair and he cried. He was so embarrassed because he said there was no truth. He was not supporting Carl Greenwich. But she attacked him. She said, you're ungrateful to Mr. Corbyn. He put you in Parliament and now you go in and support. And Mr. Corbyn is supporting David Granger. And you go in and support Greenwich. That's the way they operate. You cannot support. The only person you have to support is the leader that they put there.
No democracy.
If you choose to support another leader, you're sidelined. And they had felt that I was supporting Carl Greenwich. And I believe that that is what has been responsible for me being treated the way they've been treating me. I sent some suggestions to David Granger. And I copied it to Carl Greenwich during April last year, saying that, we have taken a position, yes, that we're not supporting the anti-money laundering bill. But I do believe that the anti-money laundering bill is important for Guyana's development. It's important, and now we're being threatened of being blacklisted. And I provided numerous reasons why we should support it. Early, maybe after 4 in the morning, Amna Ali called me, maybe minutes to 5, and cursed me out. F&S, I saw the private number call and I thought it was my grandparents calling from overseas or my aunts to say that maybe something is wrong with my grandfather who had suffered a minor stroke. And so I said, wow, this must be bad news, but it turned out to be worse than bad news because this woman started to curse me out. F&S told me how my mother made me. She doesn't even know my mother. My mother is a gem of a woman who would not curse. I don't think that anybody could really appreciate what I've been subjected to, unless you've been there,
This is shocking. I cannot even fathom. I could see the hurt in your face. I'm speechless right now. I never expected that this is what I mean. I've known the opposition to behave, but the extent of the abuse and dictatorship, it's amazing. What we'll do is I will take a short break and we'll come back.
Under the PPPC, government businesses have flourished and many jobs were created as a result. Now we look forward to a brighter future. Join me on May 11th. Let us get out and vote for President Donald Ramotar. He will ensure prosperity and success for all Ghanaians.
Welcome back. Just a reminder, you're looking at our 7th edition of Re-elect Donald Ramotar, and our guest on today's program is no other than PPPC national candidate Miss Africo Selman, and you would remember her. She is a former member of parliament for the APNU, and she has been making some rather dramatic revelations of some of her experiences that she had, some of the reasons that caused her to move away from the opposition. And as you would have been hearing before we took that break, She was lobbying, she was encouraging the opposition leader to support the anti-money laundering bill because all Guyanese would have been affected, not just PPPC supporters, but all Guyanese. And she is in the process of telling us that story.
Um, I would say that Amna Ali, she became a monster under Mr. Granger. Under Mr. Corbyn, our behavior was never like that. Mr. Corbyn was quite a principled leader. He met with us, with the members of parliament. We used to have monthly meetings. I used to take the notes for those meetings, the minutes, and the minutes are still there. But under Mr. Granger, it just became, it was like a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship. You are not entitled to your views. If your views collided with the leader's views, then I do believe that he would instruct her to abuse the persons. I think so. Why do I say that? I say that against the background that I did not send that email with my suggestions to Amna Ali. I sent it to Mr. Granger and Mr. Greenwich, two persons, very early in the morning. And Mr. Granger usually checks his email early in the morning and he would reply to you if you send him suggestions, but he did not reply to my suggestions. And he would usually reply to suggestions when I send it to him.
So you were saying that you sent the letter at around
The email,
Yes.
yeah, after 4 in the morning. And why I would say that it is Mr. Granger, if he did not instruct her to be so harsh with me, because she was excessive, he did instruct her to maybe reprimand and put me in my place, because she was not speaking to Carl Greenwich. They were not speaking to each other because of the leadership contest. And the leadership contest, you would believe that it is the PNC versus the PPP. That's how, and they become bitter enemies during the Congress time. Any person who dared to oppose or challenge the leader. And so she was not speaking to him. And so the only person who could have called her was David Granger. And you know what? It speaks volume, because you know what it says? It says that Mr. Granger cannot be trusted, because if you are going to reprimand someone, do it yourself. Do it yourself. Do not
show
pretend to
spine,
be.
show leadership.
Do not pretend to be an angel, and you're the one causing all these problems. And as I said before, Amna Ali became a monster under David Granger, and if she is a monster, it means he's a bigger monster. And so Guyanese people, you have to be very, very careful when you do go out there to vote on election day. You have to remember, you have to know whom you're dealing with.
What you're telling me is clearly a dictatorship, an entrenched dictatorial setup there, where you have Mr. Granger basically pulling the strings like the puppet master, and whoever he sees as a threat, and all you were doing is you were suggesting, for the interest of the country, for the interest of all Guyanese. And because of that, because of trying as a young leader within the PNC, trying to make a positive suggestion, you were attacked and vilified in such a manner at that time in the morning.
Yeah, and you know what it says? It says that if this is the way you are treating someone who is considered to be, and I would put it in uplifted commas, a leader, then how would you treat the ordinary people? And I am very analytical. I thought about it. I said, if this is the way I am being treated in the Partnership for National Unity, and they have no power, they're the opposition, how will they treat me when they get state power? How will they treat me when they become the government? You know, and they have me there as I don't know what. Because Mr. Granger, and I see them saying that I never did anything in the parliament. But if I never did anything, how is it you will make me the shadow minister of foreign affairs after Deborah Bakker died? You know what I mean? So it is like saying, you pick people who do no work. Then what would be the criteria for making persons?
And that was a very important
leaders?
position, the filling in the role of Debbie Bakker. And I think it speaks volumes.
It
right?
does, yes. And yet now that I am no longer with them because I chose to leave because of the division, the infighting, the corruption, and everything else. And you cannot speak up against the corruption because Joseph Harman, for example, he appointed himself General Secretary Nobody appointed Joseph Harmon General Secretary of the Partnership for National Unity. I was the coordinator of the Partnership for National Unity when it was formed in 2011. Raffle Trotman, they can tell you, because we used to do meeting. I was the note taker, I was the scribe, the designated scribe. And at no point in time did the partnership make Joseph Harmon the General Secretary or give him the power to speak for the association, because it's an association of parties. But then he would get up there and he would be the first one talking about transparency and accountability. And up to the time when I left the partnership, February 26, 2015, Joseph Harmon did not give in the financial report for the campaign of 2011. You had two campaign funds. You had one fund that was being collected by the PNC, that is Oscar Clark, the General Secretary, and you had another fund. Which was basically coordinated by Joseph Harmon, and he never submitted that report.
So we don't know what happened, how much money, how the money was spent, who got the money. We don't know anything.
Well, I don't think anybody knows except maybe Mr. David Granger, if he does, or Joseph Harmon. But the report never came, and if you would check the minutes, you would see that he has never provided a financial report. So,
that is very, very interesting.
Yes, and there was no way that you could have really pressed it, because if you can be crucified for your suggestions, what would happen to you if you dare tread on those considered leaders, self-appointed leaders, as I would call them?
Was there an amount of fear involved? I mean, did you reach a stage where if you want to raise a question, or you had to be careful as to, whose toes you might be stepping on or so? Did you ever reach to that point?
Well, you know what? I am not afraid of anyone. I do believe that God is my protector. My faith is so unshakable, It's not what people think about me. It is what I know about myself. It is God's way, it's not my way. And so, as I said, God led me into the PNC to see that that's not a party that any sane and sensible person, proper and right thinking, decent individual would want to support and want to be in, because it's double standard, it's corruption, it's infighting, it's everything. They would assassinate your character, disrespect for women, disrespect for men. They don't have any respect for anybody. Respect is a strange thing to the PNC, and it's very, very sad.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences. I think your experience will obviously guide a lot of voters out there, because a lot of persons who are thinking about supporting the opposition, after they listen to an experience for someone such as yourself, would make them cringe. And I know the opposition is trying to make David Granger look like a saint, and he's harmless and so forth, right? But from what you're telling us now, that is a behind the scenes look, right? An unvarnished look as to who is this man, David Granger. And when you compare that person to a Donald Ramotar, you would see a stark difference there in leadership.
Yeah, and if I would say, I would have trusted David Granger, because as you say, he looks like somebody that you can respect, a little stately, if you want to put it that way. But based on my experiences, for example, I did not bring the incident of the week to Mr. Granger's attention. I said, look, let me forget about this, because you know what happens? If you do appear to be complaining, then you are further castigated. You are really, really sidelined. And remember, and what happened to, as they've been saying, that Africo Selman, she does nothing. They sent me to Mexico to represent Guyana in June of last year. I was the only representative to talk about women's issues and our laws and all of that. And this is what happens. And like all abusers, what they do, when they finish beating you up or they finish abusing you, then they try to give you a gift or a sweet or a token or whatever you want to call it. Because after Amna Ali treated me so badly that week. Maybe 2 weeks later, she sent me an email saying that I'd like you to represent Guyana at this conference, and you'll get all the information from the Speaker of the Parliament, Rafael Trumpman. And so what they do, after they finish breaking you down, they try to build you up by doing something for you. But if you complain against them, they will push you out until they finally get you out. As they did with Mervyn Williams, who I see is back now and back on the list. He's on the national list. But Mervyn Williams will recall that he had supported
Vincent
Alexander in the run-up to the election, 2011 election. And you know what happened? He did not go back to Parliament. Mervyn Williams was castigated. Mervyn Williams was demonized by Amna Ali and the followers of the leader, you know. And so we know what happens in the PNC.
So quickly, as we come closer to program time, your message to voters out there, what would be your message?
I would say that when we are electing a government, and these are indeed some serious times, we elect a government based on whether we want progress to continue or whether we want to go backwards. I would say that the safest party to vote for would be the People's Progressive Party, because we've seen tremendous progress under them. Donald Ramotar does not only speak about empowering young people by creating the opportunities, as David Granger does, but what we saw when David Granger had an opportunity to support the student loan, he instructed the members of Parliament, including myself, to cut the student loan. And so he speaks one thing, but he does another thing. Donald Ramotar does not only speak about Amerindians and their development, but he ensures that you have the funds there that would assist them in doing small projects and developing themselves. Whereas David Granger speaks about empowering and developing Amerindian people, but then he instructs his members of Parliament to cut the Amerindian Development Fund. And so here we have two leaders that we will be voting for. One leader who speaks of programs and policies that would advance the country, and he works towards them. We have another leader who speaks about programs and policies to advance the country, and he destroys them and he cuts them up when he gets an opportunity. And so we cannot trust such a leader. Young people, we cannot trust a leader that would promise us free education from nursery to university and then turn around and cut the student loan. That leader is certainly not serious. The leader that I speak about here is David Granger. And so when you are casting your ballot, I would like you to take the opportunity to analyze and examine for yourself. Don't just go with what I'm saying to you. Examine the progress that you've seen under the People's Progressive Party Civic, and ask your parents and your grandparents about the rule under the PNC. It was thuggery. My father tells me, and beaten up, and those were the days of the stand down door bandits and all that, and blackouts and lining up for a little oil and a little flour. It was really, really bad. You know, sometimes we take it for granted. When we have electricity, we believe electricity was always there. When we have water, we believe water was always there. We don't stop to think the sacrifices that have had to be made in order to have these things. And you know, indeed we don't, because I myself never give it serious thought. How is it the PNC was able to stay in power for 28 years, and the other party, the PPP, was beaten so badly? My father was telling me the other day that the PPP, they only used to get 10 and 12 seats in the National Assembly, if so many. You know, and you will still hear persons out there saying that people is vote along racial lines. So who used to tell those Indian people how they used to vote? You know what I mean? And so we could see that it's after 1992 that you had free and fair elections. Free and fair. And so, my brothers and sisters, viewers out there, let's continue the progress. Let us continue the progress by ensuring that we do not have a disruption by persons who cannot be trusted. Persons who are interested in themselves only. It's about empowering David Granger and empowering Joseph Harman. They appoint themselves and make themselves leaders. It is about empowering Christopher Jones and James Bond. They just want to hold on to political power, not getting or holding political power to help persons, but to trample on persons' rights. And I've experienced it. And if that's the way they treat persons when they are in the opposition, when they have no state power, they will certainly misuse the same power. You and I will not be able to speak. We may be locked up, we may be in prison, we may be killed. And so it is that serious. And so these elections, I believe, are the most important elections in this country's history. And so I would ask all of you to not allow yourselves to be deceived by slogans and flyers and posters. But let us vote, my viewers out there, let us vote based on programs and policies. And let us vote for His Excellency Donald Ramotar, because he is proven to be someone who not only speaks, but he does whatever he says. He practices what he preaches. You know, look at what happened to Barry Armstrong, as I said earlier. And so we have to have the greatest of respect for Donald Ramotar, who is a humble man. He is very, very humble. I believe he's humble because he knows what it is to be poor,
Yes.
as I am. So once you feel it, is who feels it knows it. And that's why he would take care of those persons who are poor. He would try to get them out of poverty through education, because he knows what it is. And so I beg you to support His Excellency Donald Ramotar and the People's Progressive Party Civic, so that progress could continue and development could continue under the PPPC administration.
On that note, let me thank you very much for joining us on the program. That was no other than Miss Africo Selman, national candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic, former Member of Parliament of the APNU. This was a very remarkable program, very interesting. Had a lot of, what I should say, shocking revelations coming out of it. I would encourage you, the viewers out there, to pass on the information. This program will be on all the television stations and social media. And it's very, I'm kind of lost for words along this program, listening to the suffering and the torment and the abuse that was endured by Miss Selman. And I'm so happy that she got herself out of, she found the strength to actually get up and walk away from that situation. And she's here with us today, thank God, and she could share her experiences with all Guyanese. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for affording me the opportunity of sharing my personal experiences with the viewers out there.
So I'm Romel Roopnarine, and do take care of yourself. And remember, come May 11, 2015, you'll be voting to secure your future. You have two choices to make. I'm confident that you will make the right one. Goodbye.